President Sisi and Spanish Prime Minister Sanchez discuss Gaza reconstruction and reaffirm the commitment to a two-state solution. Egyptian Prime Minister Madbouli confirms Egypt's plan for Gaza reconstruction with a 3-year timeline. And the Palestinian presidency warns Israel's military operations in the West Bank pose a severe threat to Palestinian territories. It's 8 p.m. Cairo local time and you're now watching Q News. I'm Henny Saif and we begin tonight's bulletin with the latest developments in Gaza. And we'll start off with Spain and Egypt, who are calling on the international community to support a plan for rebuilding war-torn Gaza without displacing its residents. In a joint statement from Madrid, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez reaffirmed that Gaza is the land of the Palestinian people and that relocation is not an option. President Sisi also stressed the vital role of the UN Palestinian Refugee Agency, UNRWA, which provides essential aid, healthcare and education to millions of Palestinians, as well as refugees in Syria, Lebanon and Jordan. Israel will begin negotiations this week on the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire agreement, according to Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar. Speaking at a press briefing, Sa'ar stated that the talks will focus on the exchange of the remaining Israeli detainees held in Gaza and Palestinian detainees in Israeli prisons. He confirmed that the decision to move forward with negotiations was made during a meeting of Israel's Security Cabinet on Monday night. Talks on this phase were initially set to begin on February 3rd, but faced delays due to concerns over the stability of the ceasefire agreement. Egyptian Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli has confirmed that Egypt is developing a comprehensive framework for the reconstruction of Gaza, with an estimated timeline of 3 years for the project's completion. During a press conference, he said that he met with several African leaders during his recent visit to Ethiopia, where Egyptian construction companies received high praise. He further said that during a meeting with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, he expressed his gratitude to the Egyptian people and President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi for their unwavering support of Palestine. A total of 278 trucks, including 14 carrying fuel, have entered Gaza via the Karm Abu Salim and Al Auja crossings. According to Al Qahira News correspondent at the Rafah border, injured and ill Palestinians continue to be evacuated to Egypt for medical treatment as part of the ceasefire agreement mediated by Egypt and Qatar. Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid has strongly criticized Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government, calling it responsible for Israel's worst disaster in history. Speaking in occupied Jerusalem, Lapid said that the government has harmed security, the economy and politics. He also warned that the opposition will persist in its efforts to oust Netanyahu and expressed fears that Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich's resignation threats could derail the next phase of the ceasefire agreement.
אני הצעתי לו רשת ביטחון פוליטית לעסקת החטופים. ההצעה הזו בתוקף יותר מאי פעם. אם נתניהו רוצה ויכול לעשות עסקה, הוא ואני נדע לסגור בחצי שעה.
Hamas is set to hand over the bodies of 4 Israeli detainees on Thursday as part of the first phase of the ceasefire agreement. Hamas has also announced plans to release 6 living detainees on Saturday, stating that the number of those freed has been increasing in response to mediator requests. According to Hamas leader Khalil al-Hayya, Among those set for release are Hisham Said and Avera Mengistu, who were held in Gaza before the outbreak of the war. The Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, has met with the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian in Tehran for high-level bilateral talks. Speaking at a joint press conference following the meeting, President Pezeshkian emphasized the importance of coordinated action among Islamic nations to support the people of Gaza. Sheikh Tamim echoed this sentiment, stressing that both leaders agreed on the need for constructive dialogue as the best path towards resolving regional conflicts. For more analysis on the story, we now move to Rehem in our newsroom. Rehem.
Thank you, Hani. For further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by the Israeli Affairs researcher and member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs, Dr. Ahmed Fouad Anwar. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here on Q. Sir, firstly, let's start off by asking, what are the implications of Netanyahu's current proposal for Gaza residents to have the option of leaving? How might this affect the ongoing ceasefire negotiations?
After saluting you and your viewers, in fact, it's in a militant plan to reformulate Trump's proposals that's rejected popularly and wordly. And they are attempting to turn the eyes of what's happening in Gaza by displacing their people, and that would help in destroying as much as possible of infrastructure, life necessities, and the houses, which has the occupation army has succeeded, but in the ground failed to achieve the announced objectives, which is the release of hostages or force Hamas to surrender and not to be a source of a threat to Israel. Such a plan is an attempt to recover what's the failure of the occupation army in the Strip, which is a matter that is rejected from all the components of the equation. I'm talking about the peoples and the Palestinian resistance.
So, sir, what about the opposition leaders' criticism, the Lapid's criticism of Netanyahu's government? What potential impact could this have on the Israeli domestic politics as well as the security policies?
Certainly, Netanyahu knows that there is no possible for the government to return if an election took place, so that's why he's stalling and put obstacles before the negotiation. And that is a reflection of the decreased popularity within Israel, as he cannot form a government if the elections took place, and even if his opponent wouldn't ally with the Palestinian members within the territories of 1948 within the Knesset, which indicates the decline of popularity. So he's trying to consume the time, or using rhetoric expressions and the internal factor that would prove Netanyahu's lies regarding the number of those who fall down while in captives, and trying to influence some figures within Israel. And most of the Israeli captives are from these who were dead, and the contrary, and which is the opposite, actually proved. Even not actually any proof to that they are alive, but there are witnesses testimonies actually affirms that the majority of those being captive are alive, which is represent a pressure upon Netanyahu, his government, as well as inside America, as and those who are carrying dual nationals. That Netanyahu trying to say that they are being killed. So in order to pursue his achieving his dream of displacing the Palestinians, I think there are some changes on the ground that put obstacles before Netanyahu's manipulations and plan, and to enter the phase of the withdrawal from Philadelphia and opening the Rafah crossing, and in addition to the epic scene of the return of 100,000 from the south to the north to what's been left from the destruction.
Yes. Sir, can we talk a bit about Hamas's plans? They're planning on releasing detainees. What role does this play in the broader context of the ceasefire agreement and the future of Gaza itself?
Let's say that the Palestinian resistance led by Hamas manifested some concessions and wisdom before the demands from the League of Arab States and Cairo to withdraw or to avoid taking any role in governing the Strip, and that's what's being manifested in the process of the captives' release, that they have capabilities and that would say or would suggest some sort of rejections of those who are going to run this Strip. And I think that the statement of the resistance that took place today, that there is a possible, and they do not mind to release all the captives in the second phase, which is actually import some disagreements within Israel. In addition to what they send a letter in the PLO that they do not mind to hand over the administration of the Strip to these some technocrat or the Societal Support Committee.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. From Cairo, that was the Israeli Affairs researcher and member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs, Dr. Ahmed Fouad Anwar. Thank you for joining us here on Qnews. And now back to you, Hani, in the studio.
Thank you, Raham. Now, the Palestinian Health Ministry has reported 6 deaths and 11 injuries in Gaza within the past 24 hours due to ongoing Israeli attacks. According to the ministry, the total number of casualties since October 7th of 2023 has now reached 48,297 killed and 111,733 injured. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza continues to worsen, with hospitals struggling to accommodate the growing number of wounded as airstrikes and ground operations persist. The World Health Organization, the WHO, has announced that it will resume a mass polio vaccination campaign in Gaza on Saturday, targeting over 500,000 children. WHO warned that the deteriorating conditions in Gaza, including overcrowded shelters and damaged water and sanitation infrastructure, create an ideal environment for the spread of the polio virus. The vaccination effort, previously halted due to the ongoing conflict, aims to prevent a potential outbreak amid the worsening humanitarian situation. The United Arab Emirates has reiterated its rejection of any attempts to displace Palestinians. UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan made the remarks during a meeting with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. stressing that Gaza's reconstruction should lead to a comprehensive peace based on a two-state solution. He also warned against further regional escalation. Israeli occupation forces have intensified their military operations in Tulkarm and its refugee camps, deploying reinforcements and conducting raids in multiple neighborhoods. According to the Palestinian news agency, Wafa, Israeli troops stormed several homes and detained multiple Palestinians, including displaced individuals from the Nur Shams refugee camp. Palestinian presidential spokesperson Nabila Bourdaina has warned that Israel's ongoing military operations in the West Bank, particularly in Jenin and Tulkarm, pose a severe threat to Palestinian territories. He further called on the U.S. administration to intervene and stop Israeli attacks, rejecting any plans for displacement or an alternative homeland. China has urged for a peaceful resolution to the crisis in Gaza, emphasizing the need for dialogue and negotiation in accordance with the UN Charter. During a Security Council briefing, China's permanent representative to the United Nations, Fu Kong, has reiterated his country's position on resolving global conflicts through diplomatic means, stressing that the ongoing war in Gaza requires urgent de-escalation and a negotiated settlement. He further called for all parties to engage in dialogue to prevent further humanitarian deterioration and ensure long-term stability in the region. China has further emphasized that Gaza and the West Bank are the homeland of the Palestinian people and should not be used as a bargaining chip in political negotiations. Speaking at the United Nations Security Council, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi reaffirmed Beijing's support for a two-state solution. His remarks come amid international criticism of U.S. President Donald Trump's recent proposal for the United States to take over Gaza and relocate its residents. Wang underscored China's stance on upholding Palestinian sovereignty and urged the global community to support lasting peace in the region. Israeli security officials have reported that the military is bracing for various developments in Gaza, having approved both defensive and offensive strategies. While the future of the ceasefire remains uncertain, officials express concern over what they describe as a gradual breakdown of the truce. The United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, has said that Israeli forces raided 4 of its schools in East Jerusalem, ordering their closure. UNRWA reported that police forcibly entered a training center on Tuesday, firing tear gas and sound grenades to evacuate the premises. The raid occurred at the Qalandiya Training Center, where 350 students and 30 staff were present. Authorities also ordered the shutdown of 3 other UN-run schools, though 2 continued operations. UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric condemned the raids as a clear violation of Israel's obligations under international law.
The Secretary General strongly condemns the breach of inviolability of United Nations.
Gaza's reconstruction will require more than $50 billion following the 15-month Israeli war, according to a new assessment by the UN, the EU, and the World Bank. With infrastructure in ruins and the economy crippled, uncertainty over governance and security arrangements continues to hinder large-scale recovery efforts.
A recent assessment by the United Nations, the European Union, and the World Bank has estimated that more than $50 billion will be required to rebuild Gaza following the 15-month Israeli war on the occupied Palestinian enclave. The Interim Rapid Damage and Needs Assessments (IRDNA) outlined a $53.2 billion recovery and reconstruction plan over the next decade, with $20 billion needed within the first 3 years. The conflict has left Gaza devastated, with over 84,000 casualties reported by local health authorities. Infrastructure has been severely impacted, with more than 292,000 homes destroyed or damaged, 95% of hospitals non-functional, and the local economy contracting by 83%. The report warns that conditions are not yet suitable for large-scale reconstruction due to uncertainty regarding governance and security arrangements in the enclave. To restore infrastructure, an estimated $29.9 billion would be required, including $15.2 billion for housing. Additionally, $19.1 billion will be needed to address economic and social losses in sectors such as health, education, commerce, and industry. In parallel, Egypt has initiated reconstruction efforts by facilitating the entry of heavy construction equipment into Gaza through the Rafah border crossing. These efforts are accompanied by a large-scale humanitarian initiative, with Egyptian aid convoys delivering essential food, medical supplies, and relief materials to affected populations. Egyptian authorities, in coordination with international organizations, are ensuring the organized and efficient delivery of aid, underscoring Egypt's commitment to alleviating the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
And now we move on to the latest developments in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين. وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Al Qahira News correspondent has reported that an Israeli drone targeted a vehicle in the town of Ait al-Shab in southern Lebanon, resulting in one martyr. Israeli drones have been flying intensively at low altitudes over the 9 towns in southern Lebanon's Nabatiya region, according to the Lebanese news agency. Although Israeli forces withdrew from occupied villages in southern Lebanon, they continue to maintain positions at 5 strategic points along the border. Israeli media has reported that the Israeli army is increasing its troop deployment along the border with Lebanon to 3 times its previous level. The move, according to Israeli media, is aimed at countering Hezbollah's attempts to reposition itself in southern Lebanon. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has announced that Israeli forces will remain stationed in 5 buffer zone locations in Lebanon. He stated that the military is committed to ensuring people's complete security along the northern border and will respond forcefully to any violations by Hezbollah. These are all the news we have for now, but here's a reminder of today's main stories. President Sisi and the Spanish Prime Minister Sanchez discuss Gaza's reconstruction and reaffirm the commitment to a 2-state solution. Egyptian Prime Minister Madbouli confirms Egypt's plan for Gaza's reconstruction with a 3-year timeline. And the Palestinian presidency warns Israel's military operations in the West Bank pose a severe threat to Palestinian territories. This concludes our news bulletin for now, but please don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at QNewsEGY to stay informed. I'm Hani Saif and thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.